Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining this afternoon's panel. I'm going to be the moderator for the session. My name is Catherine Peary, and I'm the Managing Director of Media 365. Today on the panel, I'm joined by Meanda Katira at the end, who started I almost said the law firm, the HR firm ProSoft, and is probably one of Zambia's top headhunters and recruitment centers. She also recently wrote her first book, which is outside for all of you to purchase. Yes, which talks about generally her story of how she became this leading entrepreneur. And you're also now a farmer.
Yes, I exchanged high heels for gumboots.
And we also have Ms. Charity Lumpa, who is an experienced leader with many accomplishments in top management and executive positions, most notably for being the managing director of EcoBank, the Zambia National Tourist Board, and Airtel. Currently, Ms. Lumpa is sitting as the board chair of Zanaco, SOS Children's Village, and the Hostels Board Management. We also have Natasha Chumia, who is the managing partner of Folatia and Chumia, which is one of Zambia's, it was the first niche law firm that she set up practically a decade ago, and it specializes exclusively in corporate and commercial matters and is now one of the leading real estate law firms in Zambia. And right next to me, I have Monica Musonda, who is a lawyer turned entrepreneur and is the CEO and founder of Java Foods, which is a Zambian-based processing company. And they have products such as Easy Noodles, which I'm sure you're all familiar with. And they recently launched Super Cereal, which you're all being given a sachet of for a little takeaway gift. So the session today is really looking at female entrepreneurship in Zambia, asking the question, do female entrepreneurs make better entrepreneurs than male entrepreneurs? And I know everyone has their opinion on this, but currently the global stats are that female entrepreneurs account for 1/4 of all formal businesses in the world. In Zambia, we obviously have quite a growing number of female entrepreneurs. And to start the conversation, I really want to get a sense from you guys why you became entrepreneurs. What was your push to start this journey?
I have a really interesting background. I had been a lawyer for 15 years and actually really loved it and was very involved in being, the legal eagle. And then I had, in my last job, I moved to Lagos, Nigeria, and had a sort of baptism by fire into the world of business, into sitting on the other end of the table and understanding operations. And at the time, it really seemed exciting, and it didn't seem that it was, it didn't seem that you needed too much to do this. But one thing I knew I wanted to do was I didn't want to do it outside of Zambia. I wanted to come and do it in Zambia. And I knew very much, having worked for who I did work for at the time, which was Aliko Dangote, that the growth for any country on the continent was going to be around, manufacturing, around those sorts of industries and, around innovation around those. And I really thought for Zambia that in order for us to grow in Zambia and to be a part of it, I really wanted to do something in manufacturing. So I changed everything, packed my bags, and moved home in 2012 to start up Java Foods, and our first product was Easy Noodles. So I think what drove me much more was really the passion to build a business, a Zambian business. I mean, I'm very, very focused on talking about really empowering Zambians and building Zambian businesses and Zambian brands, and standing by products we produce. So we produce, and I say this all the time, is that Java Foods produces products for Zambians, and obviously we're looking at the region as well, but we should be able to stand by a good, high-quality product which gives you what you want, produced by Zambian companies.
And Natasha, because you're in a male-dominated field, and you and your partner are both females.
Yes.
How did that come about?
Well, I think for me, I can say entrepreneurship is in my DNA. Both of my parents were business people. They started a business together. So I always knew that I wanted to have my own business. And I think like many people shared on this platform this morning, I failed at several businesses. And I was the in-house counsel at an audit firm. And part of our job was to enforce security on behalf of banks. So we would go into these borrowers' companies who had defaulted. And we used a lot of so-called large law firms. And I was shocked at the level of service that we would get because it wasn't as good as I was expecting, but we would still have to pay their fees. So I thought, well, if we're going to pay for this level of service, I think I can enter the fray myself and try and do a better job. And one of the things that I noticed is that there were very few corporate lawyers. Lawyers who really understood commercial matters. So when my partner and I sat down together to discuss what kind of law firm we wanted to open, we were very clear from the outset that we were going to specialize. So we have never conducted a trial. I have never conducted a trial. And I think that it speaks to the growing sophistication of our economy, that you can specialize. You don't have to be a general practitioner. And in the beginning, there was a lot of skepticism when we told people we didn't go to court. People were like, well, what kind of lawyers are you if you're not going to court? But none of our clients have ever complained, and we've been thriving.
I never considered myself to be an entrepreneur. I think I'm a pseudo-entrepreneur, but when you asked me to speak on this panel, I went and reflected. I said, you know, I've been an entrepreneur since 1998, and I just didn't realize it. My thing is houses. I like to buy houses. So I've bought several houses. I've put them on rent and earning money from them. I also discovered that I like flipping houses. So I flip a house, do it, sell it, and buy another one. And I always thought I was doing it for myself, but I've just realized that I've not done too badly. So why did I do that? I was doing that because I'm a single parent with a child who needed to go to school, a child who had growing needs, and with one single income, it just became impossible to manage to give this child the quality of life that I wanted her to have, so that at the end of the day, when I went into this, it was very clearly to be able to support my daughter and have the lifestyle that I wanted her to have that I did not have. So that's my motivation to today.
I grew up in a very challenging or challenged environment. And I just couldn't understand why I had to be born in that family. I couldn't understand why other kids could have bread with bacon at school, and I couldn't even have bread. It was so difficult that food was a luxury. I missed a lot of school days because there was just no school fees to send me to school. So in a year, probably 2 terms. And I wanted that better quality of life. And I knew that at some point, well, I hoped at some point I would have kids and I wouldn't have to go through what I went through. And that really drove me to take the risk. I say take a risk because when I started business, I had no clue what I was doing. I was young, I was impressionable. I claimed to be this consultant who would go into companies and tell them how to turn around their business using their people, human resource. And I tell companies that their revenue would increase by so much if I gave them a person who could deliver in such a way. And I was walking, I didn't even have a car. So what really drove me was me wanting to have a better quality of life. I wanted it all. I wanted the big house, the big car. I wanted to travel. I wanted to sit in business class. I wanted to fly. So that is what really got me into it. But then going into it, and then now 12 years later, I sit and I say, okay, tick, 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 now what? So that's probably where I am right now. But that's really what drove me into it.
Okay, and I think I've spoken with most of you around the challenges. You know, I think being an entrepreneur always seems really fun and exciting when you start. And Meander, you've already talked about some of your own challenges, but really, when you look at the challenges you've had in your journey, can you point to any of them that you thought specifically as a woman, I faced this or I survived it because of my female qualities? And what would some of those challenges be?
Interesting question.
There's so many, right? I think for me, I'm in a very, very male-dominated sort of sector. So we're in manufacturing. Manufacturing in Zambia is, first of all, it doesn't look like me, or like any of us, or most of us. It's not Zambian black, and it's definitely not women. So I remember the first time we went to see some customers, and our customers were wholesalers and South African supermarkets. So the first thing the South African supermarket said to us was like, where is your MD? Like where's your boss? So it was like, we own it. And then, their disbelief was not so much that I was a woman, but more so that I was a Zambian. So we overcame that eventually. But the one which really floored me was when we went to see the wholesalers. And these are really big wholesalers. These are the ones where people, the everyday people, the people who work in your house, or your people who go to shop in wholesale, in bulk, or sometimes just for bits and pieces. And a lot of people go to wholesales, and they're run by the Asian community. And the guys would not even look at me. He would not address me. He actually would see straight through me and speak to someone else. And so I think that could be, some of it is cultural. And I realized very quickly that we were not going to achieve anything, and my product was not going to get on a shelf unless we thought about this differently. I needed him as a customer, and I needed to make sure the product was there, and he was going to sell it for me. So what I did was definitely took a step back. We went and trained our salespeople much better and got my brother to do it. But it was not for me the failing. I mean, I run the company, and I still believe that I've achieved the goal. He takes it, and they really do sell our products. And we are a testament, because now they know, yeah, that's the lady who owns the business. And they said, oftentimes asked, are you Zambian? But now that we've gone over it, but I think what it meant was that we stayed the course and we weren't discouraged by it, because you will get many instances where they will question whether you're capable or you should be there. But and the good thing we find for many women, and you'll hear it from everyone else here, is that women are so resilient. You will find the solution for it, because you can't fail. There's so much, hanging on you, whether it's family issues, whether you've got that big debt, you've got to figure out how you're going to find the solution. And that's what it was. So I think I have so many sort of horror stories around it, but what I think is happening now is that I'm finding that, hey, you don't have time to cry, you just get up and go.
We've been in business now for, this is our 9th year. And of course, there have been many challenges. And I wouldn't say that many of them have been gender specific, because, legal practice is legal practice. But what I would say, the only gender issue I can point to is being in a private law firm. Obviously, we try and get a lot of work from institutions and corporates that have their own in-house counsel. And so you try and engage with that in-house counsel so they can outsource some work to you. And I have to say that it's been a challenge to get work from other women lawyers who are in-house counsels. And it's unfortunate. I think that women naturally tend to be a bit risk averse, and they tend to be conservative. Especially when it's a woman to be honest with you. You're actually much better off trying to solicit work from a woman who you don't know and have a relationship with. Funnily enough, in our environment, men are very free to give work to each other. I was talking to one banker who said, well, when I was at that bank, I made it my mission to get as many of my lawyer friends on the panel as possible. Now, when I try and approach my lawyer friends in these institutions, I'm a bit, yeah. So I think they're a bit hesitant. So I think that would be one of the challenges, which is gender specific, that we've encountered.
I can relate exactly to what Monica is saying. I remember my first managerial role as a management trainee way back in 1983, just soon after graduating from university. I was given a workshop, an auto repair workshop to run on behalf of the Zambia State Insurance at a company called AutoCare then. And I wasn't as big as I am today. I think I must have been a puny little figure. And every person who walked through that door was a man. The first thing they asked me was, where's the boss? And I'm like, I'm the boss. Some would storm out and say, I can't deal with a woman, I can't deal with a girl, you know. And some would say, okay, jokes aside, let me have some tea while I wait for your boss. So really, we are labeled as not being capable of managing our own affairs or even, you know, running a business. The second encounter, the ones that really impinged on my mind was when I was the managing director for the Zambia National Tourism Board. At the time, the chief executive of the Tourism Council was a woman. The director responsible for tourism development was also a woman. So these three positions were quite instrumental in how tourism was developing in the country. And one gentleman told us to our faces, says, how can anything happen and develop in Zambia if you have women running these affairs? So the labels are there. You know, they label you in every aspect, in every sphere. And as I ran the organizations I was running, most of it was down to the fact that, according to popular folklore, was because I was messing around with ministers who were promoting my business. I was able to do this because I'm the girlfriend of this man. And at the end of the day, the fact that I'm a single person flew in their face as an affront, because how can a single woman who's not married even have brains enough to run a business?
No, it's an interesting point that she just said. You just reminded me of something, because often when I first started the business, everyone didn't believe I was the one who started it. And it was us as well, Zambian business. Even when I went into a ministry, they would say, so who owns the business? Really, tell us. And then someone said to me, it's because in Zambia, that if you find a woman who's doing successfully, they will say there's a man behind it. So it's either your husband, your father, or somebody else, you know. But I think, and I'm going to try to move away. We're not trying to sort of moan about the issues. What I would love for this session to be is really to say that it is, one, we're seeing a lot more women-run businesses doing very well in Zambia, as testimony on the panel. There are a lot of businesses, and actually women entrepreneurs start early. You're probably all entrepreneurs, but you just don't give yourself the credit. Exactly. You're probably selling something at school, you're an entrepreneur. You know, I find a lot of girls at UNZA who are selling hair, tutoring, everything. That's how it begins, right? So I think what I always want to say is, I think Zambia has taken great strides. You've seen, particularly in corporate, in law, we have great women, and the judges, a lot of judges who are women. But now what we have to push Zambian men and women, is to get the recognition. Because I think a lot of the times you're hearing that, we have a female MD. But when the bank does well, they're not saying it's because Charity is the chairperson. So no, you know, her number two, that guy has had 20 years experience. But the leader actually was the woman, right?
Okay,
the ideas.
I think that speaks to leadership qualities.
Sure.
And like what, as women, how we are bringing ourselves and our children, our female children up in terms of, can I be boastful? You know, that's what we consider it. And so do you find, as much as I don't want to stay on the negative, but I really want to get to the point of what are some of the ways as women we stop ourselves from progressing? And I'd really like to hear it from a leadership point of view, actually.
Okay, I wanted to say, and I can relate to everything that you've said. I mean, on one of my trips at the airport, the immigration officer looked at my passport and then said, Mianda, the one who writes in the papers, because I used to write articles in the papers, and I said, yes. Then he's like, oh, ProSoft, and then he says, yes. So he says, you work for ProSoft. Then I said, you know, you want to be as humble as you can. I didn't want to throw it in his face. I said, well, I run it. Then he says, oh, come on, who's the Muzungu behind that arrangement?
Had to be a
Then I
Muzungu.
said, there is no Muzungu behind that arrangement. Then he said, okay, who's your husband?
Yeah.
Then I said, and that at the time I was single. So I said, there's no husband? You're not even married. So it took, I just ended that conversation. It was a little bit too much. But coming back to the issue of why are women not progressing? When I attended the graduation for the current Nyamuka team, I noted that there were so few women who had made it into the top 60. And I started to think, why is it that most women didn't try and apply. And I wanted to relate it to my personal experience when I was married, my first marriage. My husband didn't think it was right for a woman to go for a networking dinner. I needed to be home. He didn't think I needed to dress in a certain way. So it was like, where do you think you're going like that? He believed it was a man's world and the woman needed to be at home. So I tried to relate and think there is a certain level of fear from women, especially those who are married, to try and step into this arena because really, it is a man's world. And you have to have an extremely understanding husband who will allow you to become that which you think you can become in the business world. Because some of the networking forums are done with men over a glass of whiskey. How many men would allow that? So those are some of the challenges that I think women do face in terms of trying to step out, especially the ones that are married, to try and go into business because there's just so much that will happen. You have a child, you have to look after the child. Is the husband willing to stay with the child? I mean, I just had a son, and he's about 2 months and 16 days, and my husband is babysitting. And that's great. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here. I would have been the one who would have had to do all of that. So it is the support system at the back that really needs a lot of help. Natasha asked an interesting question this morning, where she said, is it just women who are supposed to balance? Are men not also supposed to stay at home and babysit? You know, so those are some of the things that really pull us back, where I need to go and do a presentation in the evening to a forum, but I also have to cook for my husband. Can he not cook for himself on that particular day? You know, so those are some of the huge challenges that women face.
I think at the end of the day, it's not so much that women are not progressing. They'll progress to a certain level.
Exactly.
And at that level, they throw in the towel.
Yeah.
And I can recall, again from my corporate world, that there's a lady, fantastic risk management lady in Ghana. And I think she was the best in the entire banking group. And she was given the opportunity to come and lead the Zambian department in terms of being responsible for the regional banking in terms of risk management. And she refused. Why? She wanted to get married. So she was getting on in years, and she didn't want to limit those years, those opportunities by coming to Zambia. I don't know what made her think that in Zambia there are no eligible men, but anyway.
Well, sure, we can talk about that one.
Yeah, I've also seen that in our Zambian women, they always come back. Yesterday, in fact, I got an interesting phone call. Somebody was asking me, there is this opportunity I've heard about. Do you think I'm good enough? And I said, it's about self. I cannot attest to whether you are good or not. Do you feel ready yourself? I think as women, we are not afraid of success. We're just not wanting to take it on, to take it to the next level. What if I fail? It's okay. And I said something, fall, crawl if you have to, but get up. It's okay. And we have fallen collectively between us 1,000 times, but we got up, and I think that's the difference between the people who have moved on and the people who've stayed where they are.
So now they're saying a lot more studies are coming out showing that businesses owned by and run by women actually have a greater survival rate than businesses owned by men. So on the flip side, what are we doing right?
We're being who we are, I guess. I think women are multitaskers from a very young age. I think particularly even with Zambian women, you raised your siblings, you looked after your house, you've done it all. And I think, again, it's just Charity, what she said about thinking differently about being capable to run a business. So I think we are doing, we're thankfully educated. I mean, in other countries, they educate the boy before the girl. In Zambia today, you're more likely in the urban setting that both you and your brother will go to school together. We are doing better at school, and we are then getting our first job, but we are losing girls after that. That's the biggest challenge. I think they get their first job, they become a bank teller, they article, they qualify, and then at 30 they get married and they decide that's it. So I think I think that's where, and I've seen it sitting on boards of some of the big companies, that we're seeing lots of young girls coming into the system. Then between 30 and like 38, you have no senior managers, and then you have actually in the 40s a lot of other women coming in as well. So I do think, if I can kind of mess up the question a little bit, is that we do need to think about how we can encourage or help young girls stay the course. Even if we do have to step out a little while, how do we still remain relevant in our profession or whatever it is we do to continue to manage our businesses and make them grow in that period of time? But I recognize the difficulty of the society we live in, the expectation of our families and from everybody else about what our role should be. But really, really you see it. I mean, even in the rural areas, who do you see is tilling the soil? And the man is sitting. It's the women who are, so everybody is seeing, whether you're in an urban or a rural setting, the woman is actually a doer. Again, is are we being recognized for it, and what is happening after that? So I definitely think that, I think the more they see women like this, the more young people are able to say, well, the more it becomes less of an exception, then we get more comfortable with it, because it shouldn't be strange to have more female MDs of banks. It should be actually a matter of course. And then our young women will then say, actually, we all went to the same schools, I've done very well, and I will stay the course, and I will run my business when I want to, and I can run my business. So that's kind of
And just to add to what Monica is saying, I think women generally are more honest. Sorry, I don't mean to offend, but that's the truth. And you will find that as captains of industry or custodians or stewards of a business, especially when it comes to finances, the women are very honest. And most of the other reasons that they actually survive and thrive in these organizations, they also have a very empathetic approach to doing business. And they're hardworking, very focused on results-oriented. Monica says we are multitasking because we raise children, so we want a certain result out of them. So we have the same approach to running a business. We multitask, there's so many things that we're having to do, but at the end of the day, we also realize that we have to transform businesses through the people that are working for us. And that's because that motherhood thing kicks in. That's the only way I can explain it.
I just want to add, in terms of women having large businesses or growing their businesses to a certain scale, I think that's a Zambian issue. I don't think it's a woman issue. No. Because when you look at our economic landscape, there are very few indigenous Zambians who have large businesses. But I think that that's really going to change in the next few years to come. And also, I think what women are doing right is, if you look at what a business leader was, maybe, a long time ago. There were certain characteristics. You have to work hard, you have to be tough and aggressive. But when you listen now to a lot of the thinking around leadership, more and more feminine qualities are coming through. Emotional intelligence, being able to be consultative, to listen. Servant leadership, those are all characteristics which are really more feminine in nature. And I think in order to be a successful business person, you have to embrace both masculine and feminine attributes in order to succeed.
Okay. And I just want to go back a little bit to something both you and Meanda talked about, was this, the networking. And generally we've seen the boys club really helps. We don't really have the girls club. So how do we as women network so we're not going out and being labeled, oh, you're just trying to hook up with that guy, or that's so-and-so's girlfriend? How can you network in a way because it is important to grow your business through networking. So how do we network in a way that still maintains our professionalism, but is also bringing up the other female entrepreneurs?
I just want to share a story. I was at a cocktail about 2 months ago, and I was talking to somebody who I really respect. I think he's probably the best networker I know, very successful businessman. And we were having this conversation about networking, and he was talking about how Zambian women limit themselves in terms of their network for the very reasons Meanda was bringing up, you know, family issues and things like that. And he said, look, very often I get somebody who might arrive on the last flight from Joburg, and they come in, they get to the hotel at 22 hours, and they say to me, can I have a meeting with you right now because, you know, my whole day is booked and I'm only here for the day. And I get up and I go and meet them at Intercontinental. And I was like, well, there's no way I'm going to do that. You know, just the safety aspect. I mean, there are different things that as a woman you have to take into consideration. If, you know, you walk into a hotel room at 22 hours, it's going to raise a lot of questions. So in terms of networking, I think what's really important is that none of us started as entrepreneurs. We all went to school, we all worked, we all had careers in institutions before we decided to strike out. And I think that's where your network starts. And the best advice I got when I was working in government was from the deputy secretary to the cabinet at the time, who said, you should always do a good job because you never know who's watching you. And it's not necessarily the people who you report to or who you work with. And that's how you grow your network. When people see that you can perform, that you bring excellence to your work, when you decide to start your own business or when you're growing your business, those people then become part of your network and they're able to believe in your company and your product or your service.
Interesting. I was going to say it's and I think networking depends on the sectors you're in, right? So I probably am a little less of a networker than I was when I was a lawyer, and I'll clarify that. I definitely don't do late night meetings as well. I used to do a few of those. But I am the biggest Twitter person. I think people who follow me on Twitter will know that, and I talk about a lot of issues, as well as my brand, as well as entrepreneurship, as well as Zambia. You know, I talk about a lot of issues. And I found now that because of the way things have moved, networking has actually changed a lot. You know, everyone here, you're networking. So please, you've left your offices to come here to spend an afternoon, so please make sure you network because you're taking yourselves out. So I think that we now, with changes of time and making sure that you be at the most important place where you need to be. So there's always a conference. There's a silly period, particularly in finance and in certain sectors, where you have a conference every week around the world. You actually don't need to go for all of them. You just choose one or two. And people more often or not will say, I only do one conference a year. It's the World Economic Forum or it's et cetera, so you see me there. So I think it's about being smart about how you network, about making sure you're at the most important place you need to be. Of course, there will always be the little bits and pieces, but also being honest about it. Men do it as well. Say, actually, I can't. I'm traveling on vacation with my family, so I can't meet on Saturday. We actually have to say it sometimes, and sometimes it's not. So you will get a bad response and say, no, actually, my child is sick and I can't be at that meeting, but I can take a call at 7 a.m. and I'll take it as a call. I can't do a face-to-face. So you kind of have to push it, and you use everything, Skype, WhatsApp. I do it at any hour, literally. But I think it's given our limitations as women, or how we put ourselves in, even just a lot of other issues, try to think of how else you can communicate or keep in touch with people using technology and other ways.
Yeah. I think the limitations are more psychological, personal than anything else. I don't think there's anything that stops women from networking like the men. I think the boys' club has a lot of women members. I know I'm a member of some of these boys' clubs too. And I think the reason why I went into property is because I networked a lot with men when I was coming up in my managerial roles. And I think it's really down to what you seek in life. And you have to forget about the labels. You have to forget about who's going to say what about you, and just focus on that which you want to achieve. Because the labels will follow you, whether you stay at home or you're out there. So go for it. I like the fact that she saw about Twitter, Facebook, and all of these things. But you need to see also the whites of their eyes. They get to know you. They feel you. You press some flesh and you exchange. But just don't leave it there. Go back home, do an email, follow up, and set up another appointment. That's how you must network.
I think what also helped me the first days is I realized that it was very difficult to reach the decision makers because to get through 20 secretaries to meet an MD was very difficult. So I decided I would become a member of Rotary. It's an excellent forum. A lot of their networking times are during the day. It's a 1-week lunch forum where you get to sit next to the managing director of a company you've been trying to reach for a long time. I also made sure that I became a member of the Institute of Directors, because then that put me in touch with the decision makers that I needed to speak to in order to provide my human resource solutions. So some of the networking forums are not necessarily done in the evening. So a lot of women who feel, well, I can't go out every night because I will not be allowed. You can do a lot of networking during the day. I mean, just this conference, I've been posting about it on my Facebook page. And I remember yesterday I posted about, there's a song that's hitting the waves. And I posted about Dunona Reverse. Yeah. And I posted about it and I said, I heard it in the car and I found myself doing dance moves while I'm driving. And it had 200, I don't know how many likes and how many comments, but I posted about this forum that would allow people to become a lot better than they are, because these are the same people that complain every day. And I got 7 likes. So should I so my next post is going to be about the latest song now, because that's just it. People don't realize, even the job seeker could have been here today and would have met the managing director of Kavmon Bank and would have said, you know, I'm interested in banking. What do I need to do? I saw a lot of captains of industry today, but the job seekers would rather not be here, would rather not spend $250 on this conference. But I remember a month ago there was the Nigerian whiz kid or something, and the tickets were going for 1,000 kwacha. And people were posting their tickets to prove that they actually got a ticket for 1,000 kwacha. When I tell them about this conference, they say, me, and the 250 is too much. So there's so many networking forums that don't necessarily require you to leave home in the night. Just as this one is.
Yeah. And just to top that off, Cathy, I think at the end of the day, it's not about the size of your network. I think in this instance, size doesn't matter. Really, it's about the quality of the people in your network, the movers and shakers, and sometimes just the influencers. In your network, you don't need decision makers. You also need people who can influence. People can open doors for you. Then you walk in and the rest is down to you.
Yes.
So you guys have quite a visible profile. How important was branding yourself, and what did that entail? Because, you know, Charity, you speak a lot about not worrying about the label, so you've clearly built a brand that people understand what you're about. How important was that for you, and how did you go about doing it?
I think it's very important for me personally as an individual and also as a professional. I think in my entire life I've only ever applied for a job once. The rest have been headhunted. And why is that? Because I think I deliver on my promise. I work hard and become relevant and make sure that I stay relevant to whatever job or assignment I am given. And at the end of the day also, you have to be bold, because I think it's also important that when you realize you're going on a global platform, even a national platform, you are speaking with people who need decision makers, who need somebody to be there in the forefront to run things, to provide that leadership. So I need to be transformational. I need also to be known as somebody who, when they give their word that this is going to be done, it gets done. To the point that if it is not done, they know that you will have already said why, or at least they will understand that it's because something happened and not because she didn't do it. So my brand is so critical to me. My reputation, you can't offer me enough money to give it to you. It is so critical, and at the end of the day, it comes because you have applied yourself to your job, you are focused, and you remain true to yourself. Because at the end of the day, that is what carries the day.
Yeah, brand is interesting. I also think brand evolves a lot, because when I started, I mean, I guess I did a lot of work on the continent as a lawyer, and people would then say, oh yeah, Monica is that lawyer who does, you know, cross-border transactions. So when I moved back to start Java Foods, it was a really kind of, how do I position myself? What is it I want to be known for? And in the beginning, it was very difficult, because I was still trying to figure out, am I a manufacturer? Am I, you know, what am I building? And I'm not really a manufacturer yet, and I got a brand. And somehow what changed it was not being afraid to put my hand out anyway, even though I wasn't sure. And which is what they always say about women are waiting for that perfect moment where everything looks so perfect. Then I will put my hand up and go in front of a TV. Trust me, men do it even when they don't know the answer. Even when they're half-baked, they'll do it. So that's what I did. I thought, well, I'll floss it. I'll say I'm a manufacturer. And trust me, in my first year when I was not a manufacturer, people called me a manufacturer, and I just took it. I was like, yeah, I'm going to manufacture. And of course, it led to many different things. I mean, it led to being known as one of Zambia's entrepreneurs, a really big Zambian, push for empowerment. And now, of course, now I'm a manufacturer, and I proudly say I'm a manufacturer. And now even more now, because our latest product is a nutritional product. So now I'm in a different industry where we're now speaking around the biggest issue facing a lot of countries, including Zambia. I don't know if many of you saw last week, we are the third hungriest country in the world, which is again questionable, but the issue is that it is a really big, it's been a great platform for me and my company, is that now we're one of the few companies on the continent really pushing nutrition, and we have been recognized by the United Nations, and we're a teeny-weeny company, right? But what it's doing is it's opening our doors to the business, but also for me personally, it's helping me shape where I want to go, if I can call it my brand, and also my legacy, what I want to leave behind. So there is some thought, but I don't think you should wait for it to be perfect or know on day one. It will definitely evolve as you go along.
They say the pen is mightier than the sword. And that was my approach. What I wanted was to create credibility around myself before visibility. And so I started writing articles on matters that affect people in the workplace. I wanted to get to a point where I became an authority in human resource matters. I wanted whenever an organization was discussing people, my name would come up. I wanted when an organization was making decisions as to where do we get the best quality professionals, my name would come up. So I started to write these articles and began to build my brand around being knowledgeable about HR. And when the credibility began to build, I felt I was ready to then now come out and put a face to what I was writing. And it worked brilliantly for me. And I think that's why I've even gone further now to write a book, because long after I'm gone, people will read that on this earth walked this woman. And the other thing that I think is also important in terms of branding is even just the way you carry yourself, the way you dress. People make decisions based on limited information. 2 days ago, I had a different hairstyle, and people passed me, and I would call them and say, "Oh, but you don't have your big hair," because I've decided, this is just who I'm going to be. So there's a whole lot of things that you can do in order to just create that visibility and that credibility around who you are. You become an authority in whatever area that you focus on.
Yeah. I think in terms of branding, when I think about myself, when I was growing up, my father was very strict, and he really used to emphasize education. And we couldn't come home with B's or C's, because he always used to say, you're not average, you're not mediocre. So he always wanted us to get top marks. So because of that, I really grew up thinking that I have to be excellent. I have to be good at what I do. I can't be like everybody else. And so that is something that translated over the years. Even when I was working for other organizations, I always wanted to be good. I wanted to be the best. And I think Mianda mentioned young job seekers, even young people entering the workplace, even they have to start thinking about their brand. And I find it disappointing that they don't. We've had a number of occasions where we've had interviews, we've offered people a job, and they don't pitch up. They won't pitch up, or maybe a day before they'll write to us, no, I'm sorry, I can't come. So whenever people tell me there are no jobs out there, I always say, no, there are plenty of jobs because of the experiences that we've had. And even sometimes when they do get a job, just the lack of engagement, because when you're starting out, you need to think, how do I want my boss to know me? You have to be able to give value, and you can do that at any level of the organization. And I find it surprising that sometimes people who have a lack of experience or a lack of skills will be the ones who are disengaged, because those are the people who are easy to replace. So I think in terms of branding, I think that at whatever level you're at, whether you're working, whether you're in your own business, it's something that's really critical.
Before I continue, I wanted to find out, does anyone have any questions? Yes.
Mine was a bit of a question, but also like a suggestion. You know, you're sitting on a panel. This is for strong female entrepreneurs, and we've already acknowledged that we tend to have unique challenges. As an entrepreneur, having started, failed some businesses, one of the things that kept me sane was having people who were in a similar position or who had done better than me, who I could turn to and talk to. So do any of you participate in any kind of mentoring program? Is that something you'd be interested in starting? Is that something you'd be interested in running? Thank you.
Not necessarily as in having a structured mentoring program, but I do mentor so many people, especially startups or people who are trying to go into business, but also not necessarily in the business arena, but also people who are looking at opportunities to get promoted at work. So I literally spend, and I think maybe because I'm coming from an HR background, I literally spend my every working day coaching somebody or mentoring somebody. So I do that. It's my daily life.
There is Mara Mentor, actually. I think Evans is here. Is it Evans? Yeah, he's here. Ivan. Sorry, Ivan. Yeah. So if you want a more formal kind of mentoring program and it really relates to businesses, I think look up Mara Mentor and what they've done. They're quite successful in other countries. They've just launched, I think, 2 months ago. That's on the formal side. I mean, I think, like Mianda, I mentor a lot. Sadly, I wish I could do more, and sadly, I wish I could get more mentoring myself. But I think what I've found is that you find mentors for different things, for different times, for different problems as well. I can say this, there are a lot of people who just drop me a tweet, and if you can manage a small message, I'm happy to do it. But please don't ask me every week to do that, because my bank manager is looking for me most of the time. So I think you just have to be a little bit broad-minded about how you see mentoring. It's not going to be hand-holding, one, because there are obviously limited capacity of all of us here, and even other women have so many other things going on. But trying to get, even if you can stop anybody here and just say, I have a specific problem, as long as you know how to ask it. Like, how do I solve this? Do you have a moment to discuss this one issue? But definitely, try that, and also try the Mara Mentor.
Yeah.
I think that also kind of speaks to the question I did ask earlier, which none of my panelists actually answered, about the girls' club. This idea of, yes, is it that we need to have our own type of, not the boys' network, but like a women's network as well, because I think there are some unique challenges as entrepreneurs we do face as women, whether it's because of the balancing and just getting those introductions sometimes. Is there something that maybe we need to be thinking about, certainly as Zambian women, because Mara Mentor has only just started, and I have some experiences with them. So I wonder, is there something broader that we need to be thinking about as Zambian female entrepreneurs?
But it's not to say there aren't already some female groups, right? So I think there's some even represented here today. So they are there, depending on what kind of needs that you want. I think, one, we have to be careful about reinventing the wheel. Perhaps we need to empower the existing associations better. And I think there are several, but we kind of need to maybe streamline what people are looking for. Yeah. But I do also think, and maybe I'm a bit cheeky about this. I don't think you need to, per se, just a women's network. We don't live on an island. We really need to know how to get things done amongst everybody, I think. So I'm almost fearful sometimes to say, that's a women's group, because people perceive women's groups with such hostility sometimes, What is that? They're just whining again. And so I'm, as Kathy knows, even to sit on this panel, we've had a bit of debate about whether or not I didn't want to do it. I was like, I want to be seen as an entrepreneur first and a woman second. Exactly. But I do understand the importance of showing a lot of Zambian women the possibilities that are available and, giving you something to look up to. So I get that. But definitely, I think we should be careful about just sort of putting ourselves into groups and hoping things will change. I think we have to be a little bit smarter. Yeah.
Kathy, I tried to answer it when I said that we don't need structures, girls club, boys club. I think some of it is really in our heads. And my saying that in the boys club, you find female professionals as well. So it's not really that it's restricted to boys. I think that is an old thought. We've moved on, we've transcended. Mentoring is so critical. I get mentored. I do self-mentoring because I read a lot. I listen to people who actually are coaching and mentoring, so I do a lot of that myself. But I also mentor quite a number of people. And there's a debate out there, should it be structured? Maybe in an organization, as CEO, we put in place structured mentoring programs. But when outside of that organization, I can mentor anybody and anyhow, but you need to be able, like Monica says, to own the problem and allow somebody else to help you find the solution, because the solution lies with you anyway. You already have it. You know your business better. Mentoring is so critical. Boys club, girls club, and then even this thing about women. Do we really need a special project around women? What makes us different from the men, other than the fact that we can have children and they can't? But at the end of the day, we are the same. We are wired differently, but we can deliver point by point what they can deliver. It's down to us.
I should just say that during the tea break, I had one young lady approach me. She's a second-year law student, and basically took the route that Monica said. She said, how did you manage to manage your time when you're at university? I was like, oh gosh, that was a long time ago. I had to cast my mind back. And you know, we had like a very good 10, 15-minute conversation where I just gave her some tips and some advice. And I think that, you know, we should just move away from trying to think that mentoring will solve all of our entrepreneurship problems. It won't. I have a coach, and he has helped me enormously in growing our business. So there are different ways and means, and like Charity said, maybe it doesn't need to be structured. Maybe in a certain corporate it can be structured, but really just finding that person who you can have a conversation with, who can help you, give you advice, and then you know you move on. If you can establish a longer-term relationship, it's great, but it's not necessarily a requirement.
So I'm totally a girl's girl, and that's why I like my women's group. I like getting together with my girls and having a natter and a glass of wine and talking about our entrepreneurial challenges. So that's where I was coming from with the women's group. But we have to wrap up now. So I'd like some closing thoughts from all of you in terms of, you know, what is it like? What can you expect as a female entrepreneur for success?
My advice, entrepreneur for success, is you have to want it enough, number one. And number two, the reason for you going or starting the business has to be strong enough. Because it is that reason, the strength of that reason, that keeps you pushing even when the odds are against you. So want it enough and have a solid reason why you've gone into business. Those two things will keep you going when times are tough. Because there will be a lot of tough times, a lot of tough times.
I think it's Brad who said in the morning that if you go into business for money, it's not going to work. You have to go into because it satisfies your soul. Did you say something like that?
Yeah.
Right? Something close to that anyway. But for me, what I call as my 3 golden rules for success, so if I can paraphrase, is that I need to pray first, every day. I need to pray, and as I go to bed, I pray, because it's so important that I'm wired into my Lord and have that wisdom that requires for me to survive the next day. I also must make sure that I network diligently and with purpose. I just don't network because I need to collect business cards and anybody and anyhow, no. The fewer people, the better, but they must have the influence. And most importantly, I work smartly. And I set goals for me and that I must achieve. And I also make sure that every opportunity that comes, I grab it. It's very important. Hence today, I can proudly say that I set up EcoBank Zambia in 2009, and today it's about to celebrate its 7th anniversary. When it first came, I looked, my goodness, setting up a bank, I've never done that before. But I said, hey, like you're saying, you're shaking inside. You say, okay, I'll do it. And I went and did it, and you know, let's go for it.
I think for me, what I would say is really key is know your values. You know, there's so many different things out there that might entice you or distract you or sway you. So I think it's really important that you take time to be introspective and know who you are. Know what it is that excites you. Know what it is that brings you passion and joy. And I think that when you know your values, everything flows from there. The other thing I would say, and I think it was mentioned this morning from Brad again, is focus. A lot of us Zambian entrepreneurs are easily distracted. We're busy running 3, 4, 5, 6 businesses, hoping that one of them will take off. And unfortunately, and I've done it before. Even during this time that we've had our law firm, I was also busy running other things on the side, and none of them ever really amounted to anything. And I wish if there's something that someone could have told me at the beginning of my entrepreneurial journey, would be that focus and stay true to the one thing you think is the most important.
I think if I'm the last one, yeah. I think we need many more of us to stand out, to step up. Things are not going to fundamentally change for us as Zambians and for the country if we don't get more involved. So I think what I'm looking for, and I'm always encouraging people, is to think differently about the opportunities available. The market is you. You know what you want, you know what you need. Why can't we provide it? And I think we need to think a little bit more about, how can we make sure we lobby for the right policies to encourage growth in certain sectors? How can we utilize or get better access to financing for small businesses, for Zambian businesses, for women? But we need to all step up. So I know it is very daunting, and I really mean step up. So we mean, from selling the shirts to should I get a small shop? Should I actually now make dresses? How do we scale the business? But we really need many more. So it doesn't seem odd that you have, one woman standing out. It should be actually a rule as opposed to an exception. Yeah.
Brought to you by Nyamuka Zambia and partner sponsors.
Nyamuka Zambia.